our third episode of Confessions of a Rock and Roll Zelig. I'm your host, Holly Quirk, with my co-host here and also my dad, Del Breckenfeld. Hi, Dad.
Hey, Holly, how are you?
Good, good. How are you doing today? I know we're
I
on
heard
different
Chicago's
time
nice.
zones.
Yeah, but Chicago's nice weather, I heard,
A
I'm
little
still up
bit.
on Vancouver Island enjoying the rain every day because if I was in California, there would be no rain.
But you're going to
And
be here soon, which is exciting. You're coming out in a
yeah,
couple days.
we have a big announcement. The Gambler has returning. Every time we go, don't miss this Gambler reunion. But we had went so well last time that this time we upgraded. We got an offer to do the Arcadia Theater
Yeah.
in St. Charles, right near my brother Ed, your uncle Ed. And what's really cool is our support group act is off Broadway, which is a band we did play with back in the old days. And so it's kind of a celebration of 80s Midwest rock, not just Chicago, because both bands got major record deals. I think they traveled. We ended up traveling more, I think, outside of the Midwest, but they were a big draw. So we think it's going to be a great show. Ticket sales are really, really going well.
Yay.
And that's it. And so anyway, I thought I'd announce that. And then the other big announcement.
Let's plug that really quick though so it's Saturday, May 27th,
right.
everyone.
May 28th.
Oh, sorry. May 28th at Arcadia Theater in St. Charles, and you guys can get tickets online by going to their website, and you can purchase tickets ahead of time that way. So yeah, we're really excited because, as we said on the last podcast, Andy and I, unfortunately, we had to miss the last show because we were in Denver looking at properties. So we're really excited that we're actually going to have to get to be at this show. So yeah,
great.
Can't wait.
And Freya was at the last show, so maybe we'll tell her if she can come this one. I don't know if it's all ages. I'll have to check, but we'll have to tell her I won't wear sunglasses. He busted me the first song, Lost in the Night, which is a very old song. We kind of resurrected a great opener. And I was Lost in the Night. I came out wearing sunglasses. I don't know what that, I won't do it this time. She really busted me. And then, tomorrow is kind of a milestone, not just because it's my birthday. That's what I'm saying.
It is your birthday.
Thank you. When I was born, my life expectancy is how old I am right now. And as of tomorrow,
Dad,
don't go anywhere. Don't take a chance because you could still be that statistic. But officially tomorrow, I've surpassed my life expectancy when I was born. Life expectancy is really going up. Not that I dwell on that, but there is a story that came out with in the United States. I think the Healthcare Institute said that three out of 10 people will live to 100 now.
What? Whoa.
Technology. So
well, you're going to be one of those. You're going to be one of those. I mean, I know we got great genes on your side. Grandma and grandpa lived for a really long time. I think your grandpa, my great grandpa, lived to 99, right? So
he died just before his 100th birthday, and my grandmother passed right before her 98th.
All right. You're gonna make it. You're gonna be one of those three for sure.
Great, Holly. I'm glad you're thinking that way. And when I'm 101, then I can say I outlived that life.
that life expectancy.
We got some time to go yet. I got another third of my life to go. But yeah, you got to stay healthy. You got to stay active. That's the key mentally. And everyone always says that I'm an 18-year-old inside. I really am. And I think everybody is, or whatever era that, I could say 12, but I was a geek, but 18, I was starting to get cool. So I'm an 18-year-old.
I'm still a geek, everyone.
I know. Well, I am too. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, who is that guy? But anyway, but thank you for saying that. And I do think that maybe our podcast will still be out there, and I'll be telling Freya when I'm in the assisted living that, Freya, did I ever tell you about the time,
She's going to be like, yes, Papa. Yes, I've heard that story.
No, she'll be sweet and she'll go, no, you never told me that one, Papa. Tell me about meeting the Rolling Stones, or
have you met my daughter?
That's correct. She did bust me for the sunglasses. So anyway,
Aw. Well, we're so excited. I can't wait for that show. We can't wait to see you in a couple days here.
great.
We'll try, even though things are really crazy for us right now, getting the house together. We're officially moving to Colorado next month. Hopefully if we can try to do an episode while you're here in person and the two of us can sit together, that would be fun. So we'll try that. So yeah, let's get into it. I just want to do a quick thank you to everyone so far that has listened to our 2 previous episodes and for the great feedback and the support. It really means so much to us. I think we're mostly doing this just kind of a passion project. And yeah, because my dad has so many of these amazing stories. And, whenever you start telling strangers or other people in person, everyone seems to be usually really interested. And so, I know we wanted to do this as, yeah, just kind of as a way to get those stories out there and your thoughts on things and everything. So anyway, we just, I'm blown away about the support we've had and we just really appreciate it. So thank you all so much to continuing to like this. I think we're going to try to start getting these on YouTube as well, so we can get some videos of us out there, and so it's not just our voices. So yeah, slowly but surely we're ramping this up. So thank you again to everyone for listening. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna jump in a little bit. In the last podcast, Dad, we talked a lot about the Beatles and their influence on you and your generation. And I was just curious and thought other people would be curious if you've ever met anyone in the Beatles.
Well, yes, that would be monumental. So I'm going to go down the record. Some stories. Met one, almost met another one, and talked to one via faxes in the old days.
Fax. Oh, wow.
Faxes. I know, boy, am I dating myself. But and I think I said before cell phones. So believe it or not, yeah, before the internet too. But in that day, they called your house or you called people. Nobody had, even celebrities didn't have the phones. So it was kind of interesting. But it was a lot easier to meet them at that time. And some of our stories will cover that. But as far as the Beatles go, yes, the only Beatle I met was Ringo. And he was super sweet and nice. And so we were working with Peter Frampton, even though he wasn't a Fender artist. This was my years at Fender. But we got invited to a show. Bob Morris,
I do. Yeah,
friend.
Bob's great. Hi, Bob.
Yeah, Bob. I call him Bob the Bastard, and he loves that.
Oh,
Bloody Bastard, BBB, or the original Bad Bob.
Yeah, he's British,
not
right?
to be confused with Pecos Bad Bob. That's an inside joke. But we went to the show, and we went to sound check, and we had full-on VIP stuff. So we go to the show, and Peter lets us in back to stage area. I think it was Universal Amphitheater, and it was Ringer's All-Star Band, which is great musicians, fantastic. So we go in there, and we're right at the door, and Peter takes us up to go to the stage, and we turn around, there's Ringo and Barbara, his lovely wife, who was a Bond girl, but they're one of the greatest lasting love stories for all these years, and so Ringo comes up, and he's always a little bit nervous, because one of my friends, he was rehearsing at a studio, and he had the old Beatle drum kit. And he was rehearsing in California. My friend, who used to actually work for Gambler, but he moved to California, and he said, "Yeah, Ringo's so nice." And he said, Ringo walked in, and he said, "I go, Ringo, that's the original Beatle kit. I can't believe it," because he set up the sound and for the rehearsal. And Ringo said, "Oh yeah, you like the Beatles?" He goes, "God, it was my favorite band of all time. You're my favorite drummer." And Ringo goes, "Down on your knees, knave," like that.
Oh
like
man! Oh, Ringo.
Laughing, Ringo. And so Ringo comes up, and Peter goes, "It's my friend Del and my friend Bob. And we work with him. He's with Fender." And Ringo's like, "Oh, great." And he shakes my hand. And Barbara's just lovely and sweet. And they both come in. So Ringo's like, "Oh, okay, well," and I'm looking at him thinking, God, when I went to that movie that I talked about, Hard Day's Night, here he is. And he's just looks great. I mean, probably 15 years ago, and you couldn't tell what his age was. and just has this beautiful aura about him, the
Oh,
friendship and that peace thing that he does. That's a really important thing to him. It's not made up, not that it would be, but I go there, and this is the weird part of the story. So I'm waiting for sound check, and I'm so excited. I'm on stage. All these great artists are getting assembled, and this guy comes up, and he comes up to me, and he says, uh, uh, "Oh, are you with the band?" And I said, "No, no, I'm just visiting." I had, my all access pass, and he had no badge on. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of weird. All of a sudden, security comes running in. They go, "Get that guy!" And he took off. He wanted to meet Ringo. And the fear is, this is so sad, that after John Lennon, there's crazy
oh
people over
yeah.
there. Not that they would do anything, but I
Well,
still
not just John, I mean, Dimebag, I mean, which I know at some point we're going
right,
to talk
right.
about as well. I mean, yeah, it's scary. And now with, sorry, but now with Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle that just happened. I mean, that it's got to be terrifying, I'm sure, for artists on stage, So yeah,
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
And John Lennon loved New York because everyone left him alone. They didn't bother him, and he signed an autograph for the guy that assassinated him. I won't even say
Yeah.
his name. But anyway, I don't mean to be a downer, but Ringo was sweet. That was meeting Ringo. The next one, which was
Oh,
the almost meet, was Paul McCartney. And it was one of the greatest shows. So what
Sir Paul McCartney,
Sir
Sir
Paul
Paul
McCartney.
McCartney.
I'm a bass player. I still got my Hofner bass somewhere, and one of the great bass players of all time. So melodic, and the great singer and songwriter. So I couldn't emulate any of the Beatles, but as far as playing, I really felt that Paul, I could channel the melodies in my writing and bass arrangements, and just a fraction of the talent he had. But so we were offered a chance. I did most of the fundraising for the Fender Music Foundation, and a lot of that was the Grammy Foundation as well. And we actually started a music program for the Grammy camp, and a long story on that, a different story. But Billie Eilish came into that and worked
Oh,
with some of the kids. So I mean, there's wonderful programs. But I started all that, on behalf of Fender, and so we were invited to help a fundraiser for Paul when he was married to um, Heather McCartney, and she had lost a leg in an accident, but she had a landmine charity, and Paul's always charitable, right? So Jay Leno was hosting. The opening act was Brian Wilson. Think about that, right?
oh
Another
man.
idol, and the in between was Stephen Stills, who I knew from working with at Fender and stuff. Uh, Playing acoustically all the Crosby, Stills, and Nash hits and stuff in the audience. It was the most amazing night. So anyway, Brian Wilson comes on. It's acoustic, kind of unplugged. Brian comes on and he says, he said, "Well, I'm going to start with the song," and he does "Smile," which had just come out, and amazing vocals. I mean, a big band with him. And then halfway through, he goes, "Well," and he's looking down and he's like, "Well, this man said he really likes this song and he said it's his favorite single." He's looking down like this and he goes, "Paul, will you come out and help me?" Paul comes out and sings "Let It Be." And I'm literally in the first table
Oh
right
wow.
in front of them. And here's this angelic voice that Paul has with Brian Wilson.
Oh,
I singing actually, God Only Knows. I should have said that, God Only Knows.
okay.
I'm
Great.
sorry.
Beautiful song.
I just ruined the story, but anyway, that's okay. I want, but he doesn't, that God Only Knows with Paul's voice. And Carl Wilson had sang that, who had an angelic voice. Brian wasn't the lead singer in that, it was his brother. So in the break, for all the sponsors that were in up front, they bring us out to meet Paul. And I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going to meet Paul. And he's coming down, and he's Paul all smiling, and hey, oh, chap, people are taking pictures. And I'm like, I'm not going to ask for a picture, but I'm going to shake the man's hand. That's all it's going to be, right? I go up to him, and and he's coming right towards me, and he sees me. He doesn't know who I am, but there's a receiving line, there's a rope, but he's meeting everybody. And he reaches forward to shake my hand. This guy shoves me out of the way, this young guy, and he goes, "Paul, you're like the greatest stuff ever, all time," and this. And then that's it. And Paul goes, "Oh, thank you, and walks by. And I'm like, I look at the guy,
Oh,
it was like moonstruck. He goes, "Paul, touch my hand." And he's holding his hand up.
ah,
And Bettina, my wife Bettina's like, don't hit him, Del. That was not a good thing. I was like, one moment. So not to most people it wouldn't care, but to me, but it was a moment.
Oh,
But then Paul
that
plays.
guy, if that guy's out there, if you're listening to this right now,
Yeah,
thanks
please,
for that.
please. And so Paul goes on the receiving line. That was it. So in the break, after I came back in, Brian's sitting there, and I go up and I go, Brian, I just want to say, I'm a big fan of the Beach Boys. I work with Fender. I know you played all, Fender. And I said, but I did a movie, a TV series called it was based on Nearest Faraway Place. It was called Beach Boys American Family. It was a mini series and very successful. And I said, and I did all the instruments that Leo gave you, and I recreated your white bass exactly. And he played when he was 18 years old. And he looks at me, and Brian now, and Brian goes, "Oh, wonderful." And that's all he said. But I'm saying, but still, almost Paul and Brian. I got to tell him. So Paul goes up, and then he plays amazing set. And right in the middle, he says, "Oh, I got to return the favor. I guess he likes this song. Brian, come on out and sing." Brian sings "Let It Be" with Paul.
Oh,
Crying. I mean, me
I would
included.
cry. Yeah.
Streaming. And of course, when he does "Hey Jude," everyone cries again. But it was just a wonderful moment. So that's my almost meeting Paul story.
Oh,
And then George is a funny story. I like it. So Eric Clapton, when I first started Fender, Eric Clapton wanted these amps made. They were like reproductions of what the Stones use. They're, for technical speaking, I don't want to get too technical, 1957 high-powered twins. And they take out a rectifier tube and it distorts. So when you see the Stones this summer, all they are playing through are these two little Fender amps that kept rebuilt and everything. So the originals are kind of hard to come by, but you got to, playing at that volume every night, you got to be able, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, guys like that blow out their amps all the time, but they like the retro amps. Fender makes new amps, but they like the original. So Clapton wanted one. So a guy named John Sir, who you knew very well and worked at Fender, our neighbor, he built a perfect one. So I get a call from BB King's manager that he promised. We never offered this amp. We just did it for Clapton. He was our signature. He had his name on the guitars. And so he promised BB King one, which I did. And I thought that was an honor. The next one we did was Mark Knopfler, another from Dire Straits, another great guitar player. The last one was George Harrison.
Oh,
So his tech calls me, and I said, it'd be an honor to do it for George. And I said, it's always been an idea of mine to redo the Rocky guitar, which is the one that he painted. If you watch Magical Mystery Tour, the video for "I Am the Walrus," or the one they did on TV, which was "Hello Goodbye," George had a Strat powder blue. It was actually John Lennon's. They had two of them. They switched, and he painted it himself, and they called it Rocky, and he put the name Rocky on it. I said, I want to do Rocky with Fender. That was part of my job, bringing this stuff. So a guy named Alan Rogan, who passed away, but he was legendary with the Who and AC/DC. He was the go-to guy. And he's at George's house, and he contacted me, and he said, hey, if you're interested, send George a letter. Here's his fax number. That's where the fax comes in, But George's not going to get on the phone. Dear Mr. Harrison, you know what I mean? And so I write this whole thing, how we'd be honored to do it. Alan calls me and he goes, oh, he's not interested. And then so a week later, after that call, calls me again. And he says, Del, you're such an a-hole. And I'm like, what? What did I do? He said, we found out that there's a store called Johnny Guitar on Sunset across from Guitar Center, and they're selling the Rocky. You guys made one anyway. And I go, first of all, we would never do that. Second of all, it's my job. I work for legal as well. For anything licensed, I'd have to get the approval. That's impossible. And he said, well, you did it. And we're really pissed off. George was really pissed. And I'm like, oh no. So I go incognito, not that they would know me, but I put like this baseball hat on, and I come in and I'm looking around like this in the store. I go to Johnny Rocket undercover, stealth, like a detective, because I got to see if it is Fender, what happened. So the guy comes up and he goes, hey, can I help you? And I go, yeah, dude, I'm here to, so bad. Dude, I'm here to look at you guys had a Rocky guitar? Rocky? Oh yeah, the George Harrison. Oh yeah, we had it. We had that guitar. And he said, but somebody bought it. And I said, oh, and I said, so Fender puts that out? And he goes, no, it's not Fender, some company in England. And I actually knew the guy that did it. I didn't work with him, but I knew who he was. He told me this company name. And he said, they knock off everybody. They're doing Clapton's psychedelic guitar. They do Hendrix's stuff. And they did the George guitar. He said, we sold it like that right away. So I said, well, thank you very much. You're going to get any more? And he goes, no, it's a one-shot thing. And I said, great. So I go back and I call Alan and I go, Alan, I got to tell you one thing. I go, first of all, they sold the guitar, but the guy told me it wasn't Fender. It was this company in England that knocked it off. And he goes, yeah, I know, George bought it.
Oh.
How do you like that story?
Oh my God.
I don't know if George went in and bought it, probably Alan did, and he said, George said it's fine. He got it, that it wasn't you. He wasn't accusing you, but then he knew the story. And I'm sure he wanted to have the duplicate of it. But George had when he did his video for I Got My Mind Set on You, I think he called Johnny Guitar and Guitar Center in a few places to remember the guitars he used to play. If anybody goes back and watches that video, and that was a hit song for George. It wasn't original. They had done that, I think, with the early Beatles, but great song. Got my mind set on you. And he was sitting with the clock, and each time he played a different guitar, and they had to tell George what guitars he used to play, Rickenbacker, anyway. So that's my George story.
Oh, man.
And
Dad, you pissed off a Beatle. You had a Beatle mad at you.
I wonder where that fax went. And in the old days, you had fax stuff like Prince's in tech wanted to get a guitar, but it was when you couldn't use Prince's name. So he had to fax me the specs on it and draw the symbol, like crudely draw the symbol. I mean, I wish I kept that stuff. It was pretty funny. And said, I have to answer them. I would have to draw the symbol, and
to send back.
My handwriting is, you can't even read it. It's like a, second grader. But as far as John goes, it was interesting. I have met the Beatles kids, worked with them, their children. And I went to see my book publisher, Wiley, one of my favorite people on earth, Matt Holt, who was my publisher for The Cool Factor. Every time I go to New York, he'd want to go to a concert or a show. So he brought me in the Bowery, of all places, and he had PBR lined up because he's from Chicago. He figured, I'd go, they drink it in New York. Oh, they love this beer. It's working class, blue collar. So we go to see Sean Lennon.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Okay.
And he was playing with Rufus Wainwright III. I mean, it was the greatest concert in a little club in the Round. And so after the show, and Sean is playing a jazz master, and I go up and I go, wow, I didn't know Fender. So I go up to him. And I go, hey, I'm Del. I work with Fender. Oh, great to meet you. I said, do you ever have a relationship with Fender? I didn't do an artist relations at the time. I was doing marketing. And I said, do you ever have a relationship? And he goes, nah, I called them. Nobody calls me back and everything. And I said, well, I'm the guy from Fender. What do you need? And he said, well, I really like a guitar like this. And he said, check it out. And I hold it and I go, hey, this is really cool. It's kind of old. What is it? And he goes, oh, my dad gave that to me. It was John Lennon's.
Oh, wow.
And that was another one I got to hold.
I touched it. I got to touch it.
I played George's Rosewood Telly from the Roof of Apple. I played his guitar from the Cavern Club, thankfully, and it was all legal, no tricks. And then one quick story on this, and we'll get off. So I did meet Julian Lennon, just a social thing, a very nice. And I worked with James McCartney when I had a thing which is Paul's son, and he looks like him. He's a little heavier. What a great a singer and performer. He played in the music lodge at Sundance that I did every year for charity. And he wanted to play, and he brought his band. He was excellent. He did this great song. I don't remember the name. He gave me the record. He spelled my name wrong on it. That's okay. That's all right. But he was such a nice guy, and he was kind of nervous. I could tell he's Paul McCartney's son, but he's talented. And I said, I got to tell you, that riff you did was amazing. That song was great. And he goes, well, I'll just tell you, my dad wrote that riff. I'm like, okay, so there's the circle, And the last one was Danny Harrison, one of the sweetest guys, looks just like George. If anybody has seen Concert for George, where the Beatles are on stage, and not John, but Paul and Ringo, and it looks just like George. So everybody at Fender's like, don't say anything to him about his dad, don't bring it up. And I don't know if I told this story before on the
I don't
podcast.
know. I this is the first
So
time
this
for
is
me.
so we were at NAM. It was a lot on our credit card because he loved these wine, and he had two bodyguards with him, of course, but the nicest guy. And I'm not saying anything about the Beatles. And right in the middle of it, he goes, "You have some sort of accent." And he goes, I can't place it. I can't place it, And we had been having, a couple glasses of wine or more, maybe bottles. And
A
the
couple
other
two
vendors,
tree
some
bottles.
people were there too, but, he was just telling great stories, but not about his dad, it was his music and stuff. And he liked me because my friend Elliot Kendall, shout out to Elliot, one of my favorite people, he had a box set of Buddy Holly and I remember reading that Danny liked Buddy Holly. And so Elliot brought him a box set, and he has a picture. There's a great picture. I'll try to find it of us together. But Danny, when he wore glasses, it was like Buddy Holly glasses, And so he got down on his knees like this and said, "Bless you, bless you." It was just really cool. So he just liked me because, I mean, he knew that it's a little favor, no big deal. But he had a great relationship with Fender, a guy named Michael Schultz, who's still there. Danny and him got along. We were able to do Rocky years later because of Danny. So I'm just there at dinner, and I said, "Well, Danny," and he goes, "It's like Midwest something," and I go, "Yeah, Chicago." And he goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "Let me tell you something my dad said," and I'm like, "Okay, okay, tell me something your dad said."
Please do.
I was playing AC/DC and I'm learning this music and I'm shredding on it. And of course, Danny said when he was young, he thought his dad was a gardener. He never saw him playing guitar. He didn't know the Beatles. He thought he was always outside working in the garden. And so
Interesting.
my dad comes in and he goes, "You can't learn that stuff. It's great music, but if you want to learn AC/DC or any of that rock, you got to go back to the beginning. You got to listen to blues. And you got to listen to Chicago blues, electric blues, first bands, drums, electric bass, 1951, the first Fender bass, that was in Muddy Waters band. That was a prototype rock band. That was everything that we hear today, even the Zeppelin prototype, basically. And I said, "Oh, that's really great." And I said, "Were you ever you've gone to Chicago, right?" I figure he must have gone to Chess Studios. And he said, "Yeah." He said, "When I played Lollapalooza, it was, in the park." He said it was Harrison Street. And I called my dad and I said, "Hey, I'm playing on Harrison Street." And his dad, George, said, "Well, do you know that the Dalai Lama stayed in the hotel on Harrison his first trip to the United States?" That's important to George, that was Chicago and it was Harrison. And he said, "So it's very spiritual for me to talk about Harrison Street." And I go, "Well, there's one more thing, Danny. Do you know that Harrison Street connects with another street, South Michigan Avenue?" "Yeah." Chess Studios. Freaked out. I absolutely freaked out. The rest of the night, all he was doing was talking about blues and Chicago.
Oh.
And it was just he's just the sweetest guy. And everybody at Fender's like, "There you go." And he's telling me Beatles stories, not, so anyway, so those are all the Beatle stories. I didn't really
Oh,
take.
Dad. No, that's okay. Hey, there's still time too, right? There's still, hey, we'll put it out there in the universe, or if
Yeah.
this finds their way to any of the Beatles' ears,
The
give it,
Beatles, yeah, there is.
reach
So
out to us.
Paul is out there. I'm going to be traveling. I won't be able to go to the show. I've seen Paul many times live. The great. Never saw the Beatles, but I did see Ringo several times. I've seen Paul several times. And I tell my George Martin story. I did tell that one. I think. Did I ever tell that one?
Not to
If I didn't, we can edit it out, right, Andy? Andy, our editor.
Andy.
So I get invited to George Martin's retirement party. I thought I told this story, and it was in my life, and it was Jeff Beck and Celine Dion. All these people did an album, a tribute to Sir George. And
No.
and I got this beautiful martini glass as a gift, and it said "In My Life" on the inside. And a friend of mine worked for the label, and she met her husband through me. And her name's Lisa Ferris, and still well known in the industry. She's executive that was at the Grammys of record labels. And anyway, and so JJ Ferris is her husband and musician I worked with, with Fender and even back to Washburn. And she goes, "Well, JJ thought you should go to meet," because everybody gets to meet George. There's a receiving line, like the Paul line. I go, "Well, is there is there any kind of barrier? And she goes, no, he's just going to meet people. She didn't know the Paul story. And I said, do you think he'd sign something? And she said, I'll ask him, because she was his A&R person at the label. And she said, but I'm sure it's okay. Here's what you do. Put it in your trunk. It's a Beverly Hills hotel. It's in the trunk. If he says yes, you can have time to go get it. So I have 2 picture discs. You probably remember from the wall. One, a picture disc where it's an actual album, but it's got the album cover on the actual record, but you can still play it. And I never opened them. And one was Abbey Road and one was Sergeant Pepper. The 2 greatest, I thought the 2 greatest. So I brought both of them. I figure I'll decide when I get there. Well, sure enough, there's a receiving line, and Lisa comes up and she goes, yeah, he would love to meet you. You know, he loves Fender, and I told him who you are, and he will sign. Go get some, go get it. So I run back and I put the little glass so it wouldn't break. I put that in the car, and I go, what could I do? Well, it's got to be Abbey Road, right? The sounds on Abbey Road for producer. So I come running back, and there's Sergeant Pepper doesn't have a lot of room to sign, you know. And I said, Sir George, I just have to ask you. And he goes, oh no, I go, Sir Martin, I think I said. And he goes, we'll have none of that. It's George. Just call me George. And I go, okay, Sir George. I got myself to do it. I was tongue tied. And he's such an elegant man, tall, and still looked handsome. And very distinguished. And I said, I work with Fender. Oh, Fender made a lot of great music, not just for the Beatles, but so many groups I work with. It's just a wonderful company. I said, thank you, George. Sir George. And I said, but I appreciate that. And I said, I just want to tell you something. You've heard it a million times, 2 million times, but what you did, the whole reason I'm in the music business is what you did. He was the 5th Beatle. I said, what you did with the Beatles changed so many lives. And for me, I couldn't imagine not having that in my life and what I do today. And I'm still doing it, obviously. And he goes, can I tell you something? And I go, yeah. And he goes, he was highly overrated. It was so sweet. And I said, well, I'm going to ask you to, and he looks at me and he goes, you want me to sign that? And I'm like, oh, please. And right across where they're walking on the crossroad, there it is, George.
Oh,
One of my, I'll never sell it. I'll will it to you, Hal.
yeah. Okay. Hey, you
I'm
guys heard it.
102 when I'm ready to go. I'll will it to you. Remember that.
It's
Anyway,
for our school of rock in Colorado.
but the great part of all this is sharing. The Zelig part is I don't belong in any of those places. You know, I was a guest or I was invited through friends or however I ended up. And it was extremely special. And to meet those people and realize that all of them are just everything that you think, but they're people. You know, Ringo was just, you know, he was just natural and he knows who he is. He knows his importance, but there's no diva. If there's a male diva or, you know, even I'm going to say females the same way. I met Dolly Parton. I mean, most wonderful, sweetest person you could imagine. Those people are so genuine. I think that's part of their success. And really why people love them. So I've met so many wonderful artists that I had no concept other than their stage persona or what their agent says or PR people say. But then when you meet them, you know, and if you don't treat them like that, it's a lot more respectful. You don't ask for a picture. You don't ask for the autograph. George was somebody asked on my behalf. I never asked Ringo for an autograph or anything or a picture.
Yeah. Oh, Dad, I love those stories. Oh, and you know, like we touched on, I think even in the first episode, you know, I know we've spent a couple episodes talking about the Beatles and some stories that you have and what they meant to you. But you know, I think there's no understating how important they were to you and the music business or the industry as a whole. So thanks for sharing those stories.
Holly, the Beatles influenced everybody. I told this story to a friend of mine the other day, John Spingola, who I love dearly, who recommended, when you asked me about the podcast, he was the one that said, you got to do it. I'm part of it. I'm tired of hearing the same story, but you always have a story about everything. And I said, I don't like to always tell. He goes, no, you should, because this is if people like it, they like it. If they don't, okay. But you know, I like it and you like it and the family hears stuff, but it helps me remember. One story reminds me of another. And I was telling about Los Lobos because they're an agency I'm working with. one of their agents, and Los Lobos was the nicest guys. I mean, when Abigail Ibarra, she was the last person we had that worked for Leo Fender. She won pickups. She won Stevie Ray Vaughan's pickups. John Mayer would come in, Eddie Van Halen. They'd have to have her, and gray-haired lady sit there and hand wind their pickups, and they were moved by that, right? And she was so special. When she was going to retire, Los Lobos, I set up a stage. They came and did a concert for her personally.
Oh,
Los Lobos,
wow.
right? And I had worked with that band for years, and they did charity stuff. They came out for Bettina and I for the homeless shelter. They opened for Tom Petty, who also did a concert for us for fundraising. Oh, just wonderful people. But I took Caesar, who's left-handed, like Paul McCartney. He plays the other way, and he wanted to get his acoustic because they were doing La Bamba. In the movie La Bamba, that's the group that does the music for Richie Valens. And he wanted to get the acoustic because they played the original at the end, the original version of La Bamba. That's a Mexican. If you know the movie, it's a classic Mexican folk song. And so I had this Rodriguez, these gut string, nylon string acoustics. And so we went there and I bought 10 of them for him to try the right one. And he could play upside down. They were right-handed, he played both ways, or he played it upside down and figured it out. So he found the one he likes. And I said, man, listening to you play is so good. We're about the same age. And I said, like, who are your influences? Thinking of like La Bamba or, Richie Valens or something like that, which is so narrow-minded that I would think just it's going to be a Mexican group or something. And he goes, you are such a gringo. How old are you? I told him. He goes, the Beatles. And I go, I guess that's it. He goes, number one, it was the Beatles. We wanted to
Wow.
be the Beatles, but we happen to be Spanish speaking, band that started out doing, weddings and stuff like that. There's a great box set,
Wow.
where they play the early recordings from when they did weddings and block parties and enormous band. Anyway, that's the influence of the Beatles.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it spans across every generation since they've been around, and I know we've touched on this before too, but almost every music genre. I mean, they've touched so much. So yeah, so if everyone's like, man, they're talking about the Beatles a lot, that that's why we can't say enough just how important they were to everything. So cool. Well, thanks for sharing those stories. So let's switch gears then a little bit. So again, I know we touched a lot about the Beatles and how they influenced you and how you got started. I'm curious about hearing about some other artists that you've idolized or have influenced you. You want to share some of those?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, there's so many that I had the honor of meeting, and we'll do it in a future podcast. By the way, that's all my Beatles stories.
That's it? That's all
Just,
you got? Oh
just
yeah. Okay. I knew. I knew.
for the next couple podcasts. So let me go down the list. So most interesting artist, and they're all interesting to a certain extent, is a guy named Jeff Skunk Baxter. And Jeff is, once again, huge Beatle, fanatic, but an amazing guitar player. And when Gambler was Buster, before we got our record deal, we did cover songs. And a lot of the cover songs we did were Steely Dan. And we did this song, My Old School. And it was like this great guitar solo. And other ones, that's the one I remember. Our singer at the time, Pete Clare, guitar player, was really hard to do that solo. But we see Jeff on TV. He was with the Doobie Brothers. He played with Steely Dan, but he was mainly the guy on the Doobie Brothers. And everyone remembers him from having a beret, a big walrus mustache, and he sat.
Mm-hmm.
He always sat, and that was his thing. He didn't want to perform. He's a monster guitar player. And he told me a story one day that he could have been Hendrix's bass player. He worked at a music store, and Jimmy came in because Jimmy was always burning his guitars and losing them, and girlfriends would steal them because he didn't pay the rent or on their place. It was great stories, and I have other things on Hendrix at a later date I'll talk about. I don't know Jimmy, but worked extensively with the estate. And it's just fascinating to hear all the Jimmy, that's still one of the greatest, if not the greatest. By the way, it's his 80th birthday this year.
Oh,
He would have been 80. Sad.
R.I.P.
Everyone
Jimmy.
misses him.
Yeah.
But anyway, and Hendrix came in and he needed a bass player. This is before Jimmy went to England with Chas Chandler. He's still playing clubs like Cafe Go Go, Cafe Wa, and stuff like that. And he said, "Hey, I need a bass player. You want to be my bass player?" And Skunk goes, "Nah, I got my job here, and I can't." You know, you love, you know, and he turned down Jimi Hendrix, you know, but he's a great guitar player in his own right. But that's a great story that he told me. Wonderful story. And Jimmy ended up getting Mitch Mitchell in England and Noel Redding, who was a guitar player, and he talked him into playing bass. That's what Jimmy wanted, a guy that knew the guitar for the riffage and stuff, riffs of the melodies and like Purple Haze and all those, uh, uh, and Voodoo Child, you know, those great riffs that Jimmy would come up with. One of them doubled. So anyway, the interesting thing about Jeff, and I got to work with him extensively, produced the Ventures, and I had the honor of working with the Ventures. That's a long story, but maybe in future. But that's a band I grew up with, and many people did that didn't have a singer. So when you don't have a singer, you can play surf music. Even though we were in Chicago, and the Ventures never really surfed, but Walk Don't Run is the classic of all time, you know. And I booked them on some shows and did charity and worked on and on. And so Jeff produced some stuff. We went in the studio and listened to, which was amazing. And the last one, Don Wilson, just passed away. So that was the last. I knew all of them, but he's the last surviving member. So really an era gone. I think 86 when he passed, like maybe 5 months ago. And I did an exhibit on the Ventures at the Grammy Museum right before COVID, and then COVID shut it down, sad. But anyway, I got to go through their historical stuff. But and that included Jeff's recordings. And so Jeff had a studio. I used to visit him. Sunset Marquee, where Gambler recorded. He had his own studio there. And we became really good friends. And we were working on something for Fender called the Skunk Caster. The Skunk Caster, right? I had to get that cleared with Fender. They don't like trademark running around, but it was Skunk Baxter, and the owner of the company, Bill Schultz, loved him. And he was an innovator. Smartest guy I've ever met. I mean, as far as technical stuff, maybe your Uncle Bruce equal in that world, being a tech, you know, and designing recording boards and stuff. But Jeff was this monster guitar player. And so to tell him that, hey, man, we used to struggle with the solos that you did. You're amazing, you know? And Steely Dan was the hardest group to record from. They beat up those guys so much. I think he did 100 takes or whatever on that.
Oh, man.
Right. So, but his dad is in the military, or was, and Jeff is in the Missile Command. And this great guitar player who still tours and plays with the Doobie Brothers and solo stuff. Okay, get the story is going. I'm at NAMM, and I was working on Kenny Wayne Shepherd's, which an artist I signed, and I got an amp for him, a twin, because he kept blowing up the twins. And so I was sending a twin to him. And when I loaded, I just was late at night, and I'm going to send it out before I go home. And I had, I think, my pager or something, and it fell in the back of his amp. The great story, and I'll tell the ending of that story too. And all of a sudden I didn't have pager, and that's how they used to reach me. But then cell phones came out. Time, and I'm like, good, I lost my pager. I call Fender. Oh yeah, we're getting the first cell phones. You can get one of the first ones. Great. So we're at NAMM. I just get NAMM, which is our big association's coming up this June. It's usually in LA in the wintertime, but this time.
You want to say what NAMM stands for
National Association of Music Merchants.
Yeah.
And you know, Nuno Betancourt, one of my great artists, Steve Stevens back in Washburn, many Fender artists, the Ventures, Eddie Van Halen, they would all come and play or meet people. Dimebag Darrell, when I brought him to Washburn, when I left for Fender, I went to see him at NAMM, you know, and he would be there and meeting people. It's a great way, but it's manufacturers showing their wares. Public can get in if they on the last day, but mostly ours are there to meet the dealers and promote their product. And you know, and all the stores, small from around the world, the smallest stores, 80,000 buyers are there. And it's packed. It's at the convention center. It used to be in Chicago at McCormick Place, but it's always for 20 years it's been in LA or longer. And you see the new products and you sign up and you buy them. So it's a nonprofit, but it's very worthwhile. Now a lot of big companies like Guitar Center, they buy for the whole year. Sweetwater, they don't, you know, Chicago Music Exchange, they just pretty much buy all their product for the year. But at NAMM, you can be a small dealer and order stuff. Okay.
You used to put me to work there, Dad, when I was a teenager.
Remember, right? We did the car show. That was we talk about that someday, because that's Cars and Guitars. I'm still working on stuff with that, believe it or not. But so we'll save that because that's a little bit longer, more involved story. But anyway, so Jeff comes in and he goes, how are we doing on Skunkcaster? I said, let's talk to the owner. And he goes, yeah, we gotta develop that and stuff. And Dell's your guy. He'll do it, And Jeff goes, yeah, he always know how to pager. And he goes, okay, so I'll page you and you can call me from your office. And I go, Jeff, I don't have that pager. I don't know what happened. I didn't know selling his amp. I lost it, but I have a cell phone now. Okay. And he goes, oh, mobile phone. And I said, oh, that's great, a mobile phone. Well, I said, let me give you the number. And he looks on his phone. He's already got it. I said, Jeff, I just got it. I mean, I came to NAMM. I'm showing it to you. And he goes, look at this. And he pulls up on his phone, which is really elaborate. It was like the thing like this, or it might have been a flip phone, but it was big. And he's got the whole dossier on me on his phone.
What?
And he's not kidding. And he goes, this is your mobile number? And I'm like, yeah, that's it, Jeff. And I go, how could you possibly have that? And my birthday and every other thing on there. He goes, I work for the government.
Oh.
He goes, but we don't use that. Honestly, he said, don't worry. I just have it because I know you and I got it. And he said, and I also want to tell you you're clean. And I said, oh, thank you, Jeff.
Oh, good.
And he said, let me do a favor for you, okay? He goes, here's an strategic air command sticker. If you put this on the back of your car, right? He goes, you will never get a ticket. Any cop that stops you, he'll see that and you're free and clear. Now, don't break the law, but if you do get stopped for any reason, that will get you out of the ticket, right? So the epilogue to the story, the next NAMM show, he remembered that, probably put it in a dossier, and he says, hey, Del, did you get any tickets in the past year? And I go, no. And he goes, I told you. I never got stopped, but what am I going to tell him? And I don't even remember if I...
Did you put it on the car then?
What?
Sorry, did you end up putting the sticker on the car?
Yeah.
You did. Oh, yeah.
A little bump. I think I put it on my company car. And then one day, Jeff, I was supposed to go see him, and he called me on my cell. And Jeff said, I can't do it today. We just had a missile shoot we had a test and it didn't work. So I have to go to Washington.
Oh my God.
Just like matter of fact. And these stories are not secret. You can Google, see the story. Most interesting guy. He's like Buckethead, where Colonel Sanders thing I said, but great musician, Jeff, one of the greatest of all time. And one of the greatest people, the charitable stuff, anything you ask the guy to do. And then Kenny Wayne's amp came back and I put it back in stock and there was my pager.
There's your pager.
Dead on arrival, but it ran around the country in the back of Kenny Wayne Shepherd's 65 twin reverb. So there's another, I don't know if Kenny even knew that. But of course was one of the first guys to get a mobile phone. So if anyone from Fender's listening, I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you.
Sorry.
So that would be the most really brilliant, and a guy that I admired for his talent, and then meeting him. And I guess another one would be, if you want me to continue in that theme.
Yeah.
Another one would be Mike Nesmith. And we had mentioned the Monkees, and even how John Lennon loved those guys. He understood what they were, a pop band. But a lot of people, I met Peter Tork, and I actually met all of them. And
Peter was my favorite.
And he was a cool guy. And he was a blues artist. So he used to come and bring CDs. I have them somewhere of his band. But you can add to the story because you were part of it. So Mike Nesmith called me, and just artist relations. And I talked to him on the phone, and he was just, once again, a gentleman. And I'm thinking, this guy he's created country rock. I mean, he wrote Linda Ronstadt's first hit, different drum. And he had his band that was before the Eagles and groups like that. And his mom invented Whiteout.
Oh, really?
Mike Nesmith's mom. And Mike Nesmith invented MTV. I had Elephant Parts on VHS when we first had that old VHS player. Elephant Parts was a series of videos that also discovered that famous wrestler. Who's the most famous?
Hulk Hogan.
Wrestler? Who is it?
Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. He discovered Hulk Hogan. He put him in. He was a wrestler, but he put him in a video. And it became Elephant Parts. Anyone listening to this should check it out. It was before MTV, and it is MTV. It's a
Oh,
series of
wow.
all his songs done as videos in one place. Brilliant. So I told Mike that. I said, Mike, I'm aware of this stuff, the innovation. He said, well, the Monkees are going to get back together. He didn't always play with them. We're going to do the tour, an anniversary tour. And he said, I don't want to use an orchestra. And he said, some of the songs that we recorded and we played, like Daydream Believer, which, he said they have orchestrations in that song. I don't want an orchestra. It's going to be the four of us to show the talent. We can all do it. People knew that, but now we're going to show the world. And he said, I want electronics in my guitar. Well, we had Roland, company I work with today, and they had developed this Roland Ready guitar that was with Fender. We had a joint thing. So I got him the guitar, and it was what they call MIDI back in the day, where you could interface with electronics when everyone thought keyboard players were going to rule the world again.
They still call it MIDI.
Do they do? Okay, MIDI.
Yeah.
So you could play your guitar through a synthesizer, but you had to have a special plug. You couldn't just use a quarter-inch jack like your amp.
Yeah.
And so this one had that, and it could interface with all the electronics that he recorded. So he could play all the orchestrated parts on his guitar, and it would come out as the orchestration, just like it's a synthesizer, like a keyboard player can do today, get any sound.
Yeah.
And so we got invited. So he really loved the fact I was able to get it for him. I gave him the endorsement, and I was honored to work with him like anyone else of that stature. And so then we got invited to the first concert, which was a VIP event.
I remember that. Yeah.
Club, and I brought you because I knew that you like those guys. You like Peter. You like the people that like Ringo, like, in that movie 500 Days of Summer. I love Ringo. And he goes, why? It's my favorite Beatle. Ringo's nobody's favorite Beatle. He's my favorite Beatle. And he's a lot of people. And so Peter, as friendly and nice as he was, and Davey they all looked the same, was like what, 1996, I think, or whenever it was.
Yeah.
And you sat with who?
Kevin Costner.
We're not name dropping.
I remember that.
On a couch.
Kevin Costner.
And do you remember what you told me? You were like 11 or 12?
I don't know, but I do remember talking to him, and I remember he smelled so good. Sorry if that's so weird to talk about, but I just remember he was wearing this cologne. I have no idea what it was, but he smelled so good. And I was talking to him, and he was like really nice to me, and we were like talking for a while. And I mean, you guys, I was like 12, 13 years old, right? Like I was a kid. But I'm talking to him, and I, in my head, I'm probably like thinking like I'm like kind of flirty or something, whatever. And then, and then he's like, oh, you remind me so much of my daughter. And I remember that this guy's like 30 years older than me, and it's Kevin Costner. But yeah, I do. And wait, not just Kevin Costner. Hold on. Who was the other one there? He was wearing a helmet with the Anarchy logo on it. Do you remember?
I don't remember that.
The guy from, sorry, I'm having Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh yeah, Billy Bob, right? Yeah, Billy
he was
Bob.
there too.
In his own right, we had endorsements with Billy Bob as well.
Yeah, I remember he was wearing a helmet. It was kind of weird. Sorry, Billy Bob.
Billy Bob. Didn't he wear the vial with the blood in it?
With Angelina, yeah.
All right, we won't go
I'm
there
okay with that.
one. But you're right, Billy Bob.
Yeah. I do. That was a fun night, but I think, did I come up to you and is that what I said? That Kevin Costner smelled so good? Is that what you were going to say?
You told me that. That's what you said. He smelled so good. And I went home and I'm like, disconnect here, It's funny about Billy Bob too, because it's funny you say that, because the other day there was a little food truck at the ocean. We were hiking and we went to this fundraising event, and I wanted to get French fries for everybody. That's nobody wanted to eat a big lunch. I said, well, I'll grab some French fries. And I go up, and the guy goes, hey, what do you want? And I go, I'll have some of them French fried potatoes. And the guy looked at me like I'm crazy. That's from Sling Blade. That's whenever I do that, obviously, if you know it, maybe it's not funny, but I just kind of joke,
No, it's funny. Lots of people make that joke.
Yeah. This guy was like, yeah. By the way, do I yoke him? Who I work with, I told him after Sling Blade, I was in the studio, he was recording, and I said, hey, Dwight, I thought you were a great actor in that, Sling Blade, you're amazing, such an asshole, a-hole, excuse my friend, but whatever. And he said, oh, thank you very much. And the band calls me over and said, don't talk about movies with him, okay? Because you're just going to get him started.
Oh, no. Wait a second.
He
Wait,
was the guy.
he was the guy. It wasn't Billy Bob. I'm sorry. It was Dwight Yoakam. Sorry.
That's it. See, that's why I remember, because he always wore, because he's got a weird shaped head. I mean, good looking guy, but he always wears a big cowboy hat. But when you
Yeah.
see him without it, that's the place he played in Sling Blade.
Yeah.
And then the guitar player, I got to think of his name, but Landau. Michael Landau was the guitar. I think he was the guitar player in there or somebody. Anyway, that was a great band, but they were terrible. Remember when they're practicing and everything like that? You know, Dwight's character, of course, which is the key to Sling Blade. But that's right. That's why I thought that. See how it goes? You triggered
Yeah.
it. You got Billy
He
Bob.
was the one wearing the helmet. Sorry. Dwight Yoakam was
Well,
wearing the helmet.
he can be different, you know. And the smell thing was the point of the story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Kevin Costner. Yeah, that
so
was a fun show.
so the best part of Mike Nesmith, so he always stayed in touch with me, he would call me, we talk about things. He had a new record, he would send me stuff. So one day he calls me up and he said, "Are you on your computer?" And I go, "Always, you know, when I'm in my office and, you know, I'm working and doing my calls." He said, "Okay, go to this site," you know. So we go. And he said, "Open this up." And here's the whatever the key was to get it there, password. And all of a sudden I'm on this alien landscape. And it's really cool. It's really vivid. And he said, like, "Turn your head." And I turn and I'm looking at the landscape on my computer. And this is before anything with avatars or anything. And he said, "I'm working on this new program. I want to bring it to you for Fender. It's brilliant." And he said, "Even if I do say so myself," maybe not the words he was saying, but you guys can be the first ones on this, right? And I said, "Well, what does it do?" And he said, "Did you look behind you?" And I look around and it's him as an avatar. And
Oh,
he said, "You're an avatar." You know, he said, "I'm looking at you, you're looking at me." And he said, "We can put anything in here and people are going to pay." This is before cryptocurrency, they pay money. They'll buy stuff. So $1, they could
yeah.
buy a Fender amp and you can use it to promote your products, but you can also do it to be part of this creative world that I'm in, that I want to bring you into. And I'm like, "This is amazing." And he showed me all the stuff. I go to Fender Marketing. We have our monthly meetings, actually, where I went to Scottsdale. I told the Fender Marketing, I go, "You're an idiot. This is the stupidest thing. Nobody's going to ever want to
Oh,
buy it." Well, I understand. I didn't understand Web 2.0 either. That's why I'm in NFTs now. I'm not going to miss the train 2 times, but I understand why. I'm not blaming them. And then think of farm and think of all those sites that made
yeah.
money. Um, and it wasn't about money. He was just saying this could be a great thing for you. People could pick their Fender guitars. That could be a future. You could even put music stuff. You could teach people stuff.
Yeah.
So far ahead of that.
Oh,
So
sorry.
that's my Mike Nesmith story. You know, and sadly when he passed away, I those memories came back on just what a gentleman, but just brilliant mind. I mean, so far ahead. You know, he never stopped creating.
Wow.
So
Oh,
yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't do it on my own, but legally, when you work for a corporation, I guess I could have done it, but I didn't have the brain with, you know.
no. You had a lot going on. You were a busy
Yeah.
guy back then for sure. And then yeah, I mean just ahead of his time because now people are buying yachts and houses and
Land,
land all
like
in the
Ford
virtual
8 sells
world.
land, you know. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I don't understand it. But I'm sure Freya's going to be really into that stuff one day. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you again so much to everyone that listened. Please don't forget to do all of the social media things like it, share it. It will help us out a lot. If we eventually get these videos on YouTube, please do the subscribe thingies and all the YouTube stuff. Thank you guys so much. And again, Dad, happy birthday tomorrow. It's coming up. It's a
I'll
big
see you
one.
soon.
We're
Gambler the
gonna,
28th and at
yep,
in St. Charles
Arcata
at the
Theater.
Arcata. And let's thank Andy, your wonderful husband,
Yeah.
that talk about my understanding of doing videos and putting things together is like everyone else's on NFTs. I'm so lost, you know. So I know you and I both appreciate him and his hard work and diligence in doing this. And the people that listen to it that comment to me, they're like, Tell this story. Well, you got to tell, you didn't tell this story. So we got a lot coming up.
We got a lot more to cover for sure. We're just getting started, guys. This is our 3rd episode. So we're just getting started here. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Dad. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your week, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Okay. Bye.